Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we crack open dense corporate reports, research findings, and technical documents, and really distill them into the essential knowledge you need.
Today we are taking on a pretty critical deep dive. It's the 2023 integrated report of a major global mining company. And, this document is far from a standard business review.
No, not at all. It's a narrative that's built entirely around the weight of past catastrophe.
Exactly. The trauma from the dam breaches, Brumadinho in 2019, and the ongoing shadow of Mariana. It just defines every single page.
Absolutely. The core mission of the report is so explicit. They're trying to shift from being a company defined by crisis response to one that wants to be seen as a global leader in, quote, sustainable mining.
And that is an existential challenge, right? What they need is this profound, really fundamental shift in their corporate DNA.
So how are they framing that path forward?
The report lays out three strategic pillars. First, embedding genuinely sustainable mining practices. Second, aggressively fostering low-carbon solutions globally. And third, maintaining this really rigorous, disciplined capital allocation.
To make sure every investment supports the first two goals, I assume.
Precisely. And when you look at the leadership commentary, they're remarkably transparent about the driving force for all this.
Let me guess. The dam breaches.
It's the singular catalyst. They say the indelible lessons learned from those failures are what's driving this. The trauma is now, in a way, institutionalized. It's driving a commitment they say is non-negotiable to prevent it from ever happening again, prioritize safety, and insist on complete openness. It's a costly lesson, but it's now their operational manual.
Okay, let's unpack this transformation. I think we have to start with the most sensitive part, the accountability for the past. I mean, you can't talk about the future without addressing the ongoing human and environmental costs.
That's exactly where the report begins its real story. If we look at the Brumadinho Comprehensive Reparation Agreement, the sheer scale of the task becomes very apparent. By the end of 2023, they said the agreement had reached 68% completion overall.
68%?
Yeah.
On the surface, that sounds pretty good.
It does, but you really have to look deeper into the components of that number.
Because the breakdown tells a different story, doesn't it?
It really does. So the financial commitments, things like direct payments, funding for programs, that stood at 87% completion. The resources are flowing.
Okay.
But the performance obligations, these are the deep, long-term actions like capacity building for local communities, outfitting hospitals, real structural improvements, those were only 25% complete.
Wow. That difference is the whole story right there, isn't it? It means the, quote, easy part of writing the checks is mostly done, but the hard part, the actual physical and social rebuilding, is a marathon.
It's a multi-decade marathon.
Exactly.
It just shows that implementing deep cultural and physical change takes so much longer and requires far more logistical capital than just making payments. And we have to pause on one heartbreaking detail in the report.
What's that?
The commitment to the ongoing search for the three victims still missing from that 2019 collapse. It's a constant, tangible reminder that for many, this trauma is still a very active event.
And then there's the earlier Mariana disaster managed through the Renova Foundation.
Right.
The financial scale there is just, it's unprecedented.
It really is. As of December 2023, the total amount paid out for reparations and compensation across all programs is over $7 billion. It's a massive sustained financial commitment.
And I noticed in the report they highlight some accelerated progress in one of the most visible areas, which is housing.
Yes, getting people back into homes, it's a powerful measure of commitment. They've delivered 575 housing solutions to families so far, out of 675 approved cases.
And the goal is to finish that soon.
They're aiming to complete the resettlement for all the approved families by the end of 2024. It's a key metric they're using to show they're moving from just financial compensation toward real physical restoration.
Okay, so that's the reparation piece. Let's pivot to the second pillar, this new obsession with safety, specifically dam management. It's pretty clear the trauma has triggered some massive systemic changes.
This is where the engineering overhaul is most intense. The measurable commitments are pretty impressive. For 100% of their high-risk structures now comply with the global industry standard on tailings management, the GSNTM.
For listeners who aren't familiar with GSTM, why is hitting 100% compliance on that such a heavy lift?
Well, GSNTM is basically the industry's highest international standard for managing tailings, the waste from mining. It sets incredibly strict rules for governance, design, transparency, emergency response. So getting 48 facilities worldwide up to that standard isn't just a technical fix. It requires a wholesale change in management and oversight.
And the ultimate goal isn't just to make the dams safer, it's to get rid of them entirely. I saw they aim to decharacterize all 30 of their upstream raised structures by 2035.
Right. Decharacterize is the industry term for full decommissioning, and that program is making steady headway. By the end of 2023, they'd already reached 43% completion.
So 13 of those high-risk dams are already gone.
Exactly. Removed from the operational risk profile for good.
This has to be a massive financial undertaking. We're not just talking about talk here. This is real investment.
A huge financial outlay. Over $1.6 billion has already been invested just in the decommissioning program itself. But the real game changer is the strategy to eliminate the need for these dams in the future.
By shifting the technology away from the wet processing model.
Yes, moving to filtered tailings and dry stacking. Basically, turning that wet slurry into a dry, stackable material.
What's the investment for that pivot?
They're projecting investments over $2.2 billion between 2019 and 2027 just for that technology. They've already completed 4 new high-capacity filtering plants in one region alone. Together, those can process 60 million metric tons a year. They're industrializing risk reduction.
That level of investment really shows how institutional fear is driving technological change. Now let's look at the safety stats, because this is where I saw a fascinating tension.
Yes.
The report highlights that 2023 had the lowest accident rate in 15 years, and their internal total accident rate is down by about 70% since 2019.
Which is a phenomenal success story for occupational safety. It shows that the internal cultural shift is working for their employees.
But you have to look at the data for the surrounding community.
Exactly, and the numbers there show just how complex it is to operate so close to population centers. While fatal injuries to community members actually dropped by 31% from 16 to 11, which is good,
The non-fatal injuries went up.
they increased by 44%, which resulted in an 18% overall rise in events with community member injuries.
That's a powerful divergence. How do they explain that?
Well, the company attributes part of it to what they call improved reporting maturity, meaning they're now capturing minor incidents they might have missed before 2019. But either way, it highlights that the vulnerability of surrounding communities is this persistent challenge that's much harder to solve than just building a new filtration plant.
That tension between internal safety gains and external risk leads us perfectly into the next section, the deeper cultural and social transformation.
Right, because a change this massive can't just be about technology. It has to come from employee buy-in. They did their first ever company-wide engagement survey, and they saw a 76% response rate.
Which is pretty high for a company that size.
It is, and it delivered an 82% favorability rating on culture. That suggests the transformation journey, the commitment to safety, it's actually resonating inside the company.
And this cultural shift seems to include real, measurable moves on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes, they're not just talking about it, they're putting numbers to it. Let me see. They reported that women now hold about 24.4% of senior leadership roles.
Okay.
And in Brazil, their largest operational area, Black individuals now hold almost 35% of leadership roles. These are tangible signs driven by specific targets.
And what about their external accountability, things like human rights?
Human rights due diligence, or HRDD, is now mandatory. They report that 96% of all employees have received human rights training. And even more specifically, 99.1% of their corporate security staff have been trained on the voluntary principles on security and human rights.
That's a critical detail, especially for security teams operating in sensitive areas.
Absolutely. And they're also backing programs like Naman Serta, which works to combat sexual exploitation in their supply chain. It shows a systemic approach.
But the really huge external goal is their social ambition to lift people out of extreme poverty.
The ambition there is striking. They want to lift 500,000 people out of extreme poverty by 2030.
And how do they plan to do that?
Yeah. They're using a pretty sophisticated method, a multidimensional family monitoring approach. It goes way beyond just income. It focuses on education, health, nutrition, infrastructure, a whole person view. They've already got 30,000 people in concept tests for the program.
I liked how the report gave specific local examples. It kind of brings those massive corporate goals down to a human level.
It's the proof in the pudding, isn't it? You see anecdotes about people starting hydroponics projects that now produce 8,000 lettuce plants a month.
Wow.
Or a beekeeping project that supported 23 families and produced 480 kilograms of honey last year. These small initiatives show the goal isn't just compliance, but actually trying to generate community wealth.
And that pivot from remediation to proactive wealth generation brings us perfectly to their future-facing pillar, fostering low-carbon solutions.
Right. This is where the company positions itself not as a climate problem, but as an essential part of the solution, supplying the iron, nickel, and copper needed for EVs, wind turbines, all of it.
So they've got ambitious climate targets for their own operations, their Scope 1 and 2 emissions.
Extremely ambitious. And they're ahead of schedule. The goal is a 33% reduction by 2030, and they've already achieved over 20 percentage points of that.
So they're two-thirds of the way there.
Exactly, with the ultimate goal of being net zero for Scope 1 and 2 by 2050.
And one of their big foundational wins has been on renewable energy.
A huge success. They achieved 100% renewable electricity supply in Brazil in 2023, 2 years ahead of schedule. Globally, their electricity portfolio is almost entirely clean at 98.7% renewable. That gives them a massive head start on their competitors.
But the real industry-shaping commitment, as I read it, is in reducing their customer emissions Scope 3 through product innovation.
That's the big play. The strategy leverages their high-quality iron ore and centers on developing these massive mega hubs to produce hot briquetted iron, or HBI.
And for the steel industry, HBI is sort of the magic bullet, right?
It's a low-carbon feedstock for steelmaking. Unlike traditional blast furnaces, making steel with HBI requires much lower temperatures, and you can use clean gas fuels. Even using natural gas today, it generates about 60% less emissions than producing traditional pig iron.
A huge immediate drop. But it also provides a path to near-zero emissions in the future.
That's the design. The biggest bottleneck right now is the supply of green hydrogen. So these mega hubs are built to use natural gas now, but with the structural capability to switch seamlessly to green hydrogen once it's commercially available at scale.
So they're future-proofing their own low-carbon transition.
And investing in the hydrogen supply chain to make sure it happens.
Moving beyond just carbon, they also have some big biodiversity commitments.
Yes, a major voluntary commitment to restore and protect 500,000 hectares of forests outside their own properties by 2030. That is an area vastly larger than their own operational footprint.
And they're trying to support this through some interesting business models.
That's the really clever part. They're linking conservation directly to local economies. They set up these social impact businesses like Belterra and Capora, which are funding restoration through sustainable production of things like high-value cocoa and acai. It merges land recovery with income for local families.
Okay, let's quickly cover the final pillar. Discipline and governance. How are they structurally locking in all these promises?
Accountability is being hardwired into the system. In 2023, they elected a lead independent director to enhance oversight, and they restructured the executive committee to be more focused on technical competence.
They even created a new technical role.
Right. Dedicated technical executive vice president focused entirely on operational safety and engineering excellence.
And critically, they're linking all of this ESG stuff directly to executive paychecks.
This is the ultimate proof. Between 30 and 40% of short-term bonuses are now tied to things like safety performance, geotechnical stability, and even those black leadership targets. And 25% of the long-term compensation plan is also tied to ESG metrics.
When a quarter of your long-term pay depends on social and environmental success, you know the priority is locked in.
It's permanently in the executive mindset.
So what we're looking at here is an immense scope of operations, producing 321 million tons of iron ore in 2023 alone, supplying the whole world. And this report is just this unprecedented attempt at total corporate renewal, driven by the worst possible motivation: deep, catastrophic failure.
That's the tension you feel on every page. The sources show a company using the trauma of Mariana and Brumadinho as its singular motive force. They're spending billions to overhaul dam safety, develop solutions like HBI, and fund huge social programs, all to redefine itself as an essential and responsible part of the green transition.
The scale of the commitment to safety and decarbonization is, it's immense, it's undeniable. But the analysis also reminds us that external stakeholders still have only moderate trust. That legacy is hard to shake, especially when you see the difficulty they're having delivering that last 25% of the deep-seated reparation agreements. The investment is real, but trust isn't bought overnight.
And that brings us to a final provocative thought for you, our listener, to consider. Given that the transition to a green economy depends so heavily on critical materials like the iron and copper this company mines, how do we weigh the essential need for those resources against the non-negotiable, lingering demand for absolute safety and complete social accountability in the mining industry's future? Where should that line be drawn?